Overwatch 2 has been out for a little over 24 hours at the time of writing this review, not at the time of recording because the game keeps crashing. And while you may argue that really isn't enough time to truly experience everything the game has to offer, I'm here to tell you that it is indeed more than enough time. That is, when the game is working properly and you're able to do anything other than sit in a fabricated queue of non-existent players. So let's start this off with a few positives, even if they're going to be tinged with an additional layer of disappointment frosting.
Happy birthday to you.
The visual upgrades to the game are decent in most respects. Player models are more detailed with better lighting and better texture wrapping, but it shouldn't disguise the fact that it didn't really change anything that's really noticeable in motion. Only really when you're like looking at the player models like in your hero gallery, that's when you notice it. But I mean, look at something with like a lot of particle effects as an example of an upgrade. Like let's say the difference between Destiny 1 and Destiny 2, or Halo 3 and Halo Reach. Now both are direct sequels, but both drastically upped their graphical ante of their predecessors. Overwatch 2 is kind of more like putting on a new coat of paint on a 1960s Mustang, except you neglected to mention that the Mustang hasn't been serviced in like years, so it's basically just running on its last legs. And speaking of, they didn't supply nearly enough additional visual upgrades to really justify it. I mean, sure, there are a few nice things here and there, like Cassidy's new bomb ability or Orisa's twirling staff, but there's no new like lighting techniques or particle effects like Diva's canyons or Reaper's teleportation or anything like that. One good change that I think absolutely merits an unrequited mention without any flavorful shit-covered controversy is the sound changes and updates.
I wanted to stop.
The weapons sound punchier, the impacts feel more gratifying, the whooshes of weapons like Ryan's hammer have significantly more heft to them, etc, etc. Nearly every single character's abilities and weapons now sound newer and more gratifying, and I very much appreciate that change. The other change that I think is more just kind of in the middle, like not really quite bad, not really quite good, it's really more subjective, is the UI changes. I won't deny that the UI in Overwatch 1 was bordering on getting in the way at times, so having this more simplistic and minimalist UI is helpful, but at the same time there's a few changes to it that I think were more annoying than helpful. Like for example, you don't really actually see when people are on fire anymore, unless my game was just bugged out. Like people would say like, oh, I'm on fire, like, they would have like their random voice line to let you know, oh, hey, that character's popping off. But then you would look at the scoreboard, or you would look at like, if it was you would like look at your little icon, down in the bottom left, and it wouldn't actually show anything, which is, again, I don't know if that's just a bug for me, but it was a downgrade that I was like, why did you even remove that? That was kind of fun. Another example is like the changes to shield meters for characters like Sigma and Reinhardt. It's annoying as hell. The numbers are smaller than they already were, and the small blue like rectangle chunks to indicate its visual health is like staring at a Rorschach painting and trying to determine if its health is low or if it's your... I mean, that's all the positives I really have to say about this game for now. So let's get into ripping it a new one. Character changes are mostly fine, but there's definitely some outliers that are going to need some serious reining in to stop them from being as oppressive as they currently are. Sombra can basically dismantle an entire team by herself now. Widow can more or less stop any support player from being able to sufficiently provide backup. Roadhog's ability to control his ultimate and his healing makes him almost a necessity in comp next to somebody like Reinhardt. More on that in a minute. Bastion's cooldown-oriented balancing is actually mostly fun and mostly a good change in quick play, but it's an absolute menace in comp. While I would spend the majority of this video calling out the overtuning of its multitude of heroes, I think it's more important to address why these heroes have to be retuned, but also the overarching issue facing the majority of these changes from ever happening. The tanks.
This is fucking annoying.
I mentioned it in just about every single Overwatch 2 video that we've made since its announcement, that the biggest mistake they were making was removing a tank role. Because it was going to make the tanks far more stressed, it was going to make the DPS far more omnipresent and oppressive, and by extension was going to necessitate that more people become support mains, because that's pretty much the only way to stay alive and push an objective. But here's the problem, guys. Turns out, was completely right.
Speak for yourself, motherfucker!
Yes, you no longer have to deal with double shields. Good for you. I was clapping. I don't know if that'll actually come through in the edit. But in the few games that I've been able to make it through without a massive server crash, as a tank main myself, every encounter pretty much went exactly like this. Target the tank, focus him until death, sweet, now let's kill everything else. That's a legitimate strategy, you might say. And you're correct. But that's what both teams do, which leaves everyone at a constant disadvantage because there's no attempt to capitalize on anything else because there's no need. In Overwatch 1, you kind of had to balance between the two. You had to decide like, okay, do we get rid of the DPS first? Do we get rid of the healers first? Oh, that person's branching off and doing their own thing. Let's get that person. Now it's just like, well, there's only really one line of defense, so just get rid of that one line. By getting rid of the one sponge in the pool, you're pretty much free to splash around however the hell you like. But when you had two sponges back in the day, there's less mess. This permeates into every facet of the gameplay. The only time I had consistent engagements that felt more dynamic and different was in open queue, where we could actually go 2 tanks, 2 supports, and 1 DPS. Then we would wreck shop because we could effectively play the game more like Overwatch 1. And I realize that I'm dedicating a lot of consternation towards this one aspect, but the removal of the tank role has literally changed every single element of each encounter for the worst. And it has done nothing but ratcheted up the toxicity towards tanks to the nth degree. Now, you're the only one to blame for when that role goes wrong. And believe me, you will absolutely hear about it from your teammates. How about the other changes? Well, the new maps aren't anything incredible. Circuit Royale is arguably the only new map that I think is really worth playing on that feels like it was developed by the same people that made the original maps, but the others feel way too big for the decreased player count for the majority of modes, adding dozens of meters and additional travel time to rejoin the fight and help your team, which kind of sucks ass and kills momentum. There's some additional changes to the older maps, most of which are actually decent changes that I think were actually mostly justified. They kind of help swap up the dynamic at least a little bit, so no immediate complaints here. Though I also have yet to play on each revised map because the game can't maintain server stability for more than 30 minutes at a time, despite my gigabit Ethernet connection, but what the fuck ever. I already talked shit on the Battle Pass in a previous video, but upon now having it in hand, I gotta say, it is insulting just how predatory the monetization is and how absurd the prices are for skins and packs. I mean, yeah, cool, no more loot boxes, I guess, which was never a real complaint because getting loot boxes in Overwatch 1 was like taking a candy from the world's most dumbass baby. But, I mean, whatever. Now you can just earn coins by completing weekly challenges. Sounds great. And by that I mean that you can earn enough coins to buy a skin in, like, well, 4 seasons worth of challenges, so like 8 months of consistent grinding. Not to mention, a lot of the legendary skins didn't get transferred, nor did the coins that you already had in your account. So you lose content while simultaneously being prodded to buy more content. And look, I get that it's a free-to-play game, so they have to make money somehow. But that's such a stupid justification for the atrocious amount of required playtime to buy even one skin. In 8 months of consistent playtime in Overwatch 1, I would have had enough coins to buy upwards of like 8 legendary skins. And Activision Blizzard are not hurting for money, so don't feed us this bullshit line of, they have to make money though. And you might think to yourself, well hey, Tom, you play Destiny 2, but you don't call them out on it. Well, if you watched my videos, you'd realize that 1, I absolutely do call them out on it, and 2, while yes, there are issues, they offer consistent Bright Dust reward opportunities with daily bounties, weekly bounties, seasonal challenges, and events. In 3 months of Destiny 2, playing like every other day for like 1.5 to 3 hours, I typically leave each season with over 4,000 additional Bright Dust after buying a full set of Eververse armor, with only the dust that I've earned from playing the game or from opening engrams. I have not spent a cent in the Eververse store in over 4 years, so miss me with that bullshit. Destiny 2 has issues, economy issues for sure, but what they do is a fledgling nothingness compared to the atrocious mountain of impudent bullshit that Overwatch 2 is trying to pull on gamers. Okay, well, what about the new modes? Sorry, the new mode. Singular. The new mode with the, defend the robot bullshit is literally just a new version of Payload, except that it's just equaled out on both teams. There's no attack and defend. It's just all attack the whole way through. It's fine, but it really isn't anything that new when you look at it. It's just angry Payload. That's all it is. It doesn't shake up the team dynamic in any interesting ways. Are the new heroes any good? I think so for the most part. Sojourn is probably the most broken of the three because she's just Soldier on crack, but with the ability to basically circumnavigate everyone in the game other than maybe Tracer. But it's balanced out by a shitty ass ultimate and a heavy reliance on scoring hits to really be effective, so she's not too disruptive. Who is disruptive is Junker Queen. Let me ask you this: what if Ryan, Roadhog, and Anna all had a tank baby? Someone who can cancel healing, has a multitude of ranged abilities, a disruptive as fuck ult, and a devastating close range shotgun. Sounds overpowered, you might say. Normally yes, but Junker Queen actually feels like she fits right in. She can be a terrific menace in the right hands for sure, but she's pretty easily outplayed by more mobile characters, and if she's countered, well, she's not too much trouble. Kiriko is pretty underwhelming in my opinion, though her ability to speed up projectiles and reloads is actually really fun, especially when paired with a Zenyatta and Reinhardt. Hyperactive Zenyatta is terrifying against unshielded opponents, let me tell you. So am I comfortable at this point giving Overwatch 2 a score? Yes. Given the development time for this game, the fact that a majority of the content is locked behind seasonal waiting periods, the campaign is months away, and the updates are either too drastic to be unmentioned or too small to be given even a modicum of thought, it's more than fair to give it a score. Let me be abundantly clear about something. Overwatch 2 is still fun to play. The mechanics of the characters may be overtuned and out of touch, but it doesn't make the moment-to-moment gameplay of ability balancing and satisfying hit registration any less enjoyable to experience either solo or with your friends. But while technical specifications are wonderful, when it comes at the expense of player economy, barrier of entry, disregard of community, and outright abhorrent monetization practices on top of terrifying gameplay changes, it's hard to use that as a shining light to waddle through the murky seas of Overwatch 2. For now, unless the eventual updates change a lot of these practices, we're giving Overwatch 2 a 6 out of 10.